I grew up with Mr. Smith as childhood sweethearts. We were inseparable when we were little and grew up together as scheduled, going from our school uniforms to our wedding gowns. Mr. Smith always believes that he must not have loved me well in his previous life and left behind many regrets. That's why in this life, he always lets me bully him, even before we were born. Our parents arranged an engagement for us that I asked more than once. What if it turned out that both Mr. Smith and I were boys or both were girls after we were born? I asked this question with great sincerity. However, our parents on both sides said, "We don't mind that." I said, "I do mind Mr. Smith said, "I'll become a monk and won't get married then." My mom and Mrs. Smith grew up together too. And they have an unbreakable best friend relationship. My dad and Mr. Smith's dad went to school together and served in the military together. They have a life and death friendship. So, Mr. Smith and I have been almost inseparable since we were in our cribs. Later, I also asked, what if Mr. Smith and I end up just being friends? Mrs. Smith smiled and said, "That won't happen." "Why not?" "He has his eyes on you. His eyes can't hide his feelings. To be honest, I think Mr. Smith knows my joys, sorrows, likes, and dislikes, and even my birth details better than my mom. In some aspects, he's even stricter with me than my mom. And it's really annoying sometimes, but then again, Mr. Smith is really good looking and he's exactly my type. He hasn't grown into an unattractive person since we were kids. He has good grades. He's tall. And as the saying goes, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. The most important thing is that he's really nice to me. That I don't know why, but our parents on both sides are strangely confident and at ease about us. Once, I accidentally fell and directly sat on him, and our posture was extremely ambiguous. Mrs. Smith happened to come downstairs at that moment. I was stunned and immediately jumped up, saying, "It's not what you think. It's not. Please listen to my explanation." Mrs. Smith sighed and said calmly, "Honey, as a girl, you should have a bit of self-protection awareness. Don't be fooled by this good-looking guy. He might seem decent, but when he acts like a brute, you'll be the one to suffer. You can tease him a little bit, but don't take responsibility. But if he dares to bully you, I'll cut off his manhood." I was taken aback for a moment, then looked at Mr. Smith with a face full of black lines and couldn't help but burst out laughing. I even took this sentence as if it were an imperial edict and remembered it in my heart. I would tease him every now and then and run away after that. It wasn't until many years later when he pinned me on the bed and got his revenge that I almost couldn't get out of bed for 3 days. Only then did I realize how wrong I was. What a bitter experience. It's not hard to understand why everyone dotes on me. Actually, I have an older brother. But Mrs. Smith has poor health and only gave birth to Mr. Smith. I'm the only girl in this circle. And I'm really cute. I've been the apple of everyone's eye since I was a child. But I'm a good girl and I never take advantage of people's love for me. Mr. Smith and I have had the habit of keeping diaries since we were kids. Once, when I was cleaning the house, I accidentally found his old diary. I realized that he had underlined almost our things with a red pen, especially in the places where I teased him. He put a star and wrote a series of fierce words beside them, like making me unable to get out of bed for 3 days or making me beg for mercy under him, and so on. When I was a kid, I hadn't had much contact with things related to the dead. The first time I saw a coffin, I was so scared that I just looked at it from a distance and hid in Mr. Smith's arms. That night, I had a nightmare and cried as I ran to my brother's room. It took my brother a long time to soothe me to sleep. I remember when I was about 10 years old, I went shopping. In a hidden corner, I saw an old lady showing off her wealth by setting up a stall and selling a pile of banknotes at a low price. Actually, I hadn't seen counterfeit money at that time. I was really excited and bought a stack of them. When I got home and counted them, my goodness, it was $1 billion. I thought I was rich. For this, I carefully bought a box and hid the money in it. At that time, I really did not know that this money was used to burn for the dead people as consolation during the sacrifice. Later, on my brother's birthday, with great reluctance, with a beaming face, with a look of compassion, I placed the money in my brother's trembling hands. "Bro, if you need money in the future, just tell me. Your sister will give it to you. We're not short of this money." Then I stood on tiptoe like my dad and patted his shoulder. The air was silent for 5 seconds and then another 5 seconds. My brother almost fainted from anger. With a dark face, he gritted his teeth and called my name. Emily, you're not right. You're really not right. That if I hadn't run fast, I probably would have been beaten to death on the spot later. Every time this incident was mentioned, especially in front of my brother, Mr. Smith would unashamedly lean on my shoulder and shake with laughter. Stop laughing. What's so funny? Ha ha ha. Besides, those banknotes were almost used later, weren't they? Mr. Smith suddenly stopped talking and looked at me straight in the eyes. I felt a little flustered under his gaze. I meant the operation. If the surgery fails. Mr. Smith lowered his head and wrapped his arms around my waist. I don't know why, but I kind of regretted bringing up this matter. Emily, there was a hint of grievance in his voice. Emily, I'm here. I really can't imagine what I would do. What I could do if that operation failed. You are my life. Without you, how could I live? Actually, I don't really know what to say about that operation. After all, at that time, I hardly knew anything, and they didn't tell me anything either. For fear that I would worry too much. I was probably 16 years old then. At first, I just felt dizzy, sleepy, and weak all over. Later, I had headaches, vomiting, and was in a state of confusion when we went to the hospital for an examination. I felt like vomiting again when I was on the medical machine. I almost vomited out my bile, and my face was as white as a ghost. My brother held me up, and his eyes were red. Emily, don't be afraid. Your brother is here. Be good. It'll be okay. When the examination was over, I was almost unconscious, in a trance. I felt someone grab my hand, and a clear and gentle voice said with a sob, Emily, don't fall asleep. Your brother Smith is here. You mustn't fall asleep. Emily, Emily. Before I lost consciousness, with tears in my eyes, I squeezed out a sentence through my teeth. Smith, I'm not dead yet. When I woke up, it was already night. I saw Mr. Smith and my brother lying beside my bed on either side. I quietly pulled out the tube. It was for removing blood stasis, and it was filled with medicine, not an oxygen tube, by the way, and tiptoed out. I heard the conversation between my parents and the doctor in the doctor's office. I listened for a while, half understanding. I looked up at the ceiling and said calmly, damn it. Then, I walked back to the ward casually. When I saw Mr. Smith standing not far away, my eyes suddenly filled with tears. Looking at him, I said, hug me. Back in the ward, Mr. Smith placed me on the hospital bed and readjusted the tube for me. My brother came over with a smile and asked, Emily, are you hungry? I heated up some soup for you. I shook my head, but then took a few sips after thinking about it. Actually, I understood a little of what the doctor said, but I had to pretend I knew nothing. The surgery was scheduled for 3 days later. The blood clot in my brain had mostly dissolved, but I was still supposed to stay in bed. During that time, I slept almost constantly. It was summer vacation, and every time I woke up in a panic in the middle of the night, Mr. Smith was always by my side. I could tell he had lost weight. Smith, go home and rest. Mom, Dad, and David will take turns looking after me. I said that. He shook his head. I'll worry if I can't see you, Smith. What? He chuckled softly and put his arm around my shoulders. Feeling sorry for me? Yes. You have dark circles under your eyes. Disgusted with me? He raised an eyebrow and looked at me meaningfully, looking at the boy in front of me. My heart skipped a beat. Emily, he said, staring out the window for a few seconds before turning back to me with sincere eyes. If one day you get tired of being a girl, come be my wife. I'll marry you. I wasn't expecting him to say that. I immediately looked down, avoiding his gaze. Mr. Smith, is this a proposal? No, it's a forced marriage. But Mr. Smith, I'm still young. I don't think so. Are you ready to be Mrs. Smith? Smith, if I remember correctly, you're less than 3 months older than me. Early maturity isn't always a good thing. Mr. Smith. He laughed. Okay, I won't tease you anymore. Fine. I promise. That night, the moon was full. I had a dream where we were old, sitting in rocking chairs with white hair. He held me and said, do you know how lucky I am to have met you? On the day of the surgery, my parents, brother, and Mr. Smith's parents all came. But I couldn't find Mr. Smith anywhere. Where's Smith? I asked, pouting unhappily. Maybe he's too scared to come. Mrs. Smith mused. Should I call him? Go ahead. Seconds later, a familiar ringtone came from the doorway. The air froze for a moment before the door opened. When did you get here? I never left. Mr. Smith said hoarsely. We didn't speak after that. But I could sense his fear. As I was wheeled into the operating room, I smiled at him and said, Smith, I want a candy. Okay. I'll go buy one. He ruffled my hair with a forced smile and turned to leave. But his clenched fists gave away his anxiety during the 4-hour surgery. I felt nothing because of the anesthesia. Later, I found out that Mr. Smith had waited outside the operating room, his fingers digging into the wall until they bled. He didn't utter a word the entire time when the doctor announced the surgery was successful. Mr. Smith stared blankly as I was wheeled back to the ward. After a long pause, he suddenly smiled and said, I'll go get that candy. Before the surgery, I ate and drank normally, as if nothing was wrong. But after the operation, my mindset changed completely. I became paranoid, suffered from mood swings, and even developed depression. For a while, my daily routine was morning, laugh, afternoon, laugh, evening, laugh, midnight. Life isn't worth living. During one period, Mr. Smith's family went on a trip abroad. And my parents were also away on business. Only David and I were home. Maybe I hid my struggles too well, especially from David, who's as dense as a tree. One night, I forgot to lock my door. David came to borrow a book and pushed open my door just as I was pulling down my sleeve. He froze, then rushed over and grabbed my arm. We stared at each other in silence. Finally, he pulled me into his arms and said softly, Emily, I had a nightmare. I'm scared to sleep alone. Can you stay with me tonight? Me. David. Emily. Grossed out, we lay in bed together. I hugged my stuffed rabbit. Facing away from him, I glanced at David several times. He was staring blankly at the ceiling, lost in thought. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. David, show some respect. Call me bro. I'm here, bro, right here. Tears suddenly welled up. I threw off my blanket and burrowed into David's warm embrace, sobbing uncontrollably. Snot and tears stained his pajamas. David didn't say anything. He just held me, gently patting my back until I calmed down. Emily, we're all here for you. Please don't do this anymore. It breaks my heart. Okay. Good girl, bro. Why aren't you scolding me or giving me a pep talk? He smiled and ruffled my hair. How can I tell a child caught in the rain to behave? Besides, I know what you really need isn't empty words. He sighed. I'd rather help you heal than cause you more pain. I'll always be here, whether you turn back or not, bro. Tell me a story. Okay, let me think. David rambled incoherently for a while. Wait, brother, what are you even talking about? Where's the princess and prince? This doesn't make sense. On the origin of species, bro, yeah. Let's go to sleep. Hush, little Emily. Don't say a word. Stop laughing. Okay, sleep tight. Little Emily. Dreams are where your brother lives. Ugh, that's creepy. Emily, I'm sorry. Keep going. Mwah, humph, bro. Emily loves you, bro loves you too. For a long time after that, David came to talk to me every night. He learned to sing lullabies and tell fairy tales, leaving only after I fell asleep. This became our little secret from kindergarten to junior high school. Mr. Smith and I attended the same school and shared the same desk for 9 years. Sometimes I seriously wanted to slap him into next week, the kind of slap that leaves someone stuck to the wall. It wasn't until our sophomore year of high school when we chose different academic tracks that I finally escaped him, but soon, I missed him. Without him, who could I copy homework from? I was on the first floor, he on the second, though separated by just one floor. It felt like miles. Oh right. I just remembered one night, Mr. Smith had his first wet dream. He climbed over the balcony into my room and grabbed my hand while I was asleep. Emily, quick, kiss me. Who wouldn't panic? Before I could react, I slapped him across the face. By the time I processed what happened, he was covering his cheek on the balcony, fake crying. Emily, you don't love me anymore. Then he climbed back over in record time. Wait, Smith. I sat dumbfounded on my bed, staring at the empty balcony as the breeze tousled my hair. The next morning, David and I ran into Mr. Smith wearing a huge black mask. Did you sleep well last night, Emily? He asked, forcing a smile that sent shivers down my spine. Great, you actually went back to sleep. What else was I supposed to do? Pick my toes and gossip. You don't care about me at all, what? You really don't love me anymore, what? I guess I'm all alone in this, what? I watched his dramatic exit, completely confused at he losing it. David asked, pulling me along. How should I know? I sighed dramatically, tilting my head 45 degrees to gaze at the sky. Let's just say, after winter comes. I gave David a meaningful look. Spring, huh? Probably horny. Unexpectedly, David switched rooms with me that night. Mr. Smith ignored me for 3 days after supposedly climbing into my room again only to find David instead. Oops, back to the story. After we chose different tracks, our time together decreased. Whenever I tried to ask Mr. Smith questions, David would block me. Ask me instead. Your brother scored 147 on the SAT math section back in the day. That I didn't know why. But since the balcony incident, David seemed hostile towards Mr. Smith. Their interactions were icy, like they were seconds away from throwing punches. What happened? One day after school, Mrs. Smith drove us home. I fell asleep and woke up with my head on Mr. Smith's lap, covered in his oversized jacket. When I stirred, he cupped my face. Don't sleep here. Go home and sleep. The blanket in the car hasn't been washed. Oh, why didn't you carry me inside earlier? I tried. Couldn't lift me. I shot up. I pulled out my smartwatch. Hey David, come pick me up. My legs are numb. I'm in the car outside, lazy. Walk home. Emily. Actually, who's with you? David's voice boomed through the speaker. Smith. 20 seconds later, David yanked open the car door and carried me inside. Another time, while studying in the den, David kept reading nearby. Smith. I think this answer is A. I said, probably C. He replied nonchalantly. David leaned over. It's D. Dummy. Not sure who he was calling dummy. I checked the answer key. What is it? B. Smith. Wow. Such a genius, David. How does this guy even rank first in your school? Are there no other students? Both of you. Get out. Bad girl versus student council president. What an iconic duo. David always seemed so gentle around me, the kind of guy who could charm at a formal dinner and bake cookies afterward. But I heard he was ruthless in his business dealings. Never would I have guessed someone so professional could be wrapped around his girlfriend's finger. One day, Dad asked me to deliver documents to David's university. He was supposed to go himself, but it was their anniversary. So I got kicked out, alone and cold. A poor little girl. I had our driver drop me off. From afar, I saw David in his crisp white shirt and slacks, looking every bit the elegant gentleman. I snuck up behind him and covered his eyes. Guess who? Is it? A fashion disaster. Awkward. I pouted and let go. Fidgeting, David ruffled my hair. Don't worry. Next time, dress better. Wanna explore my campus? Can I? Sure. He took my backpack and led me inside. I remembered the documents. Oh right. I need to. A stunning girl with a high ponytail interrupted. David, your new toy. She's so young. You're such a creep. I was 18 then. And David was 22. Well, maybe I just look younger. Lucy, what are you talking about? Wait, David, who is she? Who am I? Lucy, this stunning girl, lifted my chin and looked down at me mockingly. You better listen up, little sister. I'm David's girlfriend. We've kissed and, been intimate. Got it? Shit. I stumbled backward in shock, my eyes wide with disbelief. I pointed at David and said, David, what on earth have you been doing out there? David flinched and pulled me close, glaring at Lucy. Stop talking nonsense. Good grief. I almost thought he was going to say, don't talk like that in front of the kid. Oh, my God. And what do you know? David's ears turned red. So I quietly took out my phone, found Mom's number in the contacts, dialed it, and hid the phone behind my back, sensing something was wrong. Lucy asked tentatively, David, is she your sister? No. No, your real sister. Emily. Yeah, I am, this time. It was Lucy's turn to be shocked. Emily. Let me explain. Lucy said. No. No. It's okay. I took off running and then took out the phone. Mom. You're going to be a grandma. Emily. Get back here. A few minutes later. I sat on a chair, rolling my eyes gracefully. What a perfect couple. One blocked the front. The other blocked the back. One tried to grab the phone, and the other grabbed the back of my neck. I let out a yelp, and then I twisted my neck. Meanwhile, on the other end of the line, Mom said, "What the hell?" Dad said, "Ignore her. She's probably crushing on some male celebrity again." Damn it, Emily. Let me explain. Poof, Emily, hee, David. I said with a fake smile, looking at him. You really are something. Your aim is so accurate that you've got quite a grip. Lucy finally couldn't hold back her laughter. David and I both looked at her. And then, crack. Good grief. I twisted my neck again. David, you better take your sister to the hospital. Lucy said. No need. I'll take her home. She can't stand the smell of disinfectant. Okay then. I'll be going. Lucy winked at David. David immediately turned his head away, his expression unreadable that I suddenly felt so out of place. So I was the only fool in this situation. When we got home, during the process of putting medicine on my neck. Damn. It hurts. Be gentle. Be gentle. Okay, David. I hesitated. Nothing happened between us. Oh. But you like her. Don't you, David? Maybe, David. If one day you really fall in love with someone, I'll step aside for that girl. I can live without a brother, but you can't live without a wife because of me, silly girl. Don't worry. Your brother will never leave you. I'll be with you as you grow up and be your support forever. David promises Emily that he'll never leave. Then he smiled at me, his eyes full of tenderness. That I will always protect you. My precious princess, David. I was moved to tears. Don't cry. You already. I glared at him. And David quickly changed his words. You already look like Dad. You'll definitely look ugly when you cry, but it's not your fault. It's genetics, Dad. Dad. I stammered. Yeah. When you cry, your mouth puckers up like a tomato, and your eyes squint like a worm. TSK. 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 So ugly. Well, I might as well start planning my own funeral. I let out a sigh. And to my surprise, David sighed too. It's really ugly. I don't know how Mom ever fell for him. She's so kind. David, why don't you look behind you? Ha. Dad. Dad. Ha. You've got quite a mouth on you, kid. David quickly hid behind me and hugged my shoulders. Emily, do you think I'll make it out of this room alive? David, come here. Dad has something to tell you. David shook his head vigorously, refusing to go over. Then Dad opened my closet, took out a coat hanger, and walked over with a smile. Wait a minute. Why does this coat hanger look so familiar? Damn it, Dad. What are you doing? That coat hanger is for my fox fur coat. I had worked so hard to do all of Smith's Chinese and English homework over the summer vacation, copying 24 essays of 800 words each, and used the money I earned to buy that coat. At this moment, my fur coat was lying on the floor, and there were several big footprints on it that were clearly larger than size 48. I was on the verge of a breakdown. Michael, you. I immediately jumped out of bed and ran out of the room, crying, Mommy. No. Honey, let me explain. Why are you calling your mom? Dad will buy you a new one. Okay. My brother lay on the bed, laughing so hard that he couldn't get up for a long time that night. Dad slept in the study. My brother was locked in the bathroom by Mom to wash my fox fur coat, and I was punished for swearing by having to copy a classical text that I had to copy. I copied it by the light of a lamp, with tears in my eyes. Finally, in the early hours of the morning, I managed to finish copying this extremely long text. Then I sent a video call to Mr. Smith, because of the time difference. It's really rare for us to be on the same schedule. Sighed that I waited and waited. And finally, the day came when Mr. Smith returned from abroad. I skipped all the way to the airport to pick him up, but just when I went to the bathroom for a moment, I was kidnapped. When I woke up, I was locked in a dark room, my hands and feet tied up. The air was filled with the smell of mold. God knows how much I'm afraid of the dark. I couldn't help but cry, but I didn't dare make a sound. Suddenly, The door was kicked open, and the sunlight shone directly into my eyes. I winced and turned my head away, awake. I was so scared that I kept shrinking back. My hand touched something furry. I turned around and took a closer look. It was a cat covered in blood. I let out a scream, and the tape on my mouth pulled, causing a sharp pain that I cried even harder. Shaking like a leaf, the guy got impatient and kicked aside a piece of wood. "What are you crying for? You're so noisy." "Hey, boss. You know, this girl is quite pretty." As he spoke, his hand slowly reached out towards me. I struggled desperately, but he suddenly slapped me across the face. I was stunned, and I couldn't even cry anymore. I just kept shrinking back. All right, we haven't got the money yet. It'll be troublesome if something goes wrong. Go and check if anyone's following us." Sure. After they left, I curled up on the floor, crying so hard that I could barely catch my breath. The place was full of scrap iron, waste residue, and wood shavings. I didn't even know how many cuts I had all over my body. Suddenly, I felt something tugging at the hem of my clothes. I was so scared that I jumped. It turned out that the cat was still alive. Actually, I'm afraid of cats, but at that moment, I didn't know why. I wasn't scared of it at all. Instead, I wanted to hug it. I gently placed my finger on its little paw, and it nuzzled closer to me, whimpering that I don't know how long had passed. But the door was kicked open again. I shrank back in fear and my head hit the wall with a thud. "Emily. David. My brother. Emily. Don't be afraid. Your brother is here." My brother gently untied the ropes on me, peeled off the tape from my mouth, and pulled me into his arms. "Don't be scared. Your brother will take you home. Your brother will take you home, David." "Yes. I'm here." The cat." My brother glanced at the bodyguard uncle beside him, and the latter nodded understandingly. Outside the door, my brother reluctantly placed me in Mr. Smith's arms and turned to go in another direction. Mr. Smith took me and held me even tighter than my brother did. He rubbed his face against mine. I saw that his eyes were very red. Although he was comforting me softly, there was a storm brewing in his eyes that I was still trembling uncontrollably. He gently kissed my forehead and said, "Be good. Go to sleep. Don't be afraid. I'll always be with you." Only later did I find out that my brother had beaten those who kidnapped me directly into the ICU. Several policemen couldn't stop him. It was only when Mom and Dad rushed over from the airport in time that they managed to hold my brother back. As for where Mr. Smith went and what he did after he took me to the hospital, he still hasn't told me to this day. After that incident, I didn't see Mr. Smith for several days. Well, to be specific, I didn't see him face to face, because I knew that Mr. Smith had always been by my side, secretly watching over me and protecting me. But what on earth was he being so awkward about? One night, I woke up in a fright in the middle of the night, seeing that the light in Mr. Smith's room was still on. I tiptoed to the balcony and called out softly, "Smith. Honey Smith." After getting no response for a long time, I gathered my courage and climbed over the balcony. I gently slid open the French window, but there was no one inside. I was really puzzled. Could he be hiding? That's too much. Just then, the bathroom door suddenly opened. Mr. Smith was clearly taken aback when he saw me. "Emily. Hi. I got lost. What a coincidence. You're taking a shower. Get on the bed. Is this really okay? You're not wearing shoes." Mr. Smith helplessly rubbed his forehead. Is that so? Ha. I'll go right away. Mr. Smith came over and sat beside me. I habitually leaned my head on his shoulder. For a long time, neither of us said a word. "Smith. Can I sleep here tonight?" I looked at him pitifully. "I'm scared to stay in my room alone. Dad definitely won't let Mom sleep with me, and I don't know where my brother is." "Honey Smith," I tugged at his sleeve, shaking it back and forth. "Okay." His Adam's apple bobbed as he agreed. He picked me up in a princess carry. Suddenly, I remembered that I had forgotten something important. "Smith. Wait a moment. I have to climb back and leave a note. I forgot to bring my phone." "Use mine." "Okay. David. I'm sleeping at Smith's place tonight. Don't worry. Good night. Mwah." Okay. Time to go to sleep. Time to go to sleep. Awoo. 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 Pfft. Are you imitating a dragon's roar? Mr. Smith smiled and ruffled my hair. A bold idea suddenly popped into my head. So I looked up and smiled at Mr. Smith. Big doggy. Big doggy. It's a wolf. Big doggy. Woof woof, honey Smith. I love you to death. Don't love me to death. Love me while I'm alive. Okay. What I didn't know was that at that time, my brother was helping his girlfriend fight. He was already tired from the fight. But when he saw the message I sent, he was so angry that he dragged those two people up and beat them up again. I hope they're okay. That night, I hugged Mr. Smith's waist. Suddenly, I didn't know what to say. Just as I was slightly distracted, Mr. Smith spoke. Emily. Yes, Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't protect you well, huh? I've thought a lot these days. I'm not mad at you. He met my gaze. I'm mad at myself. I couldn't even protect the girl I love. Do you know how heartbroken I was when I saw you all injured? The person I cherish the most. I wouldn't even touch her myself. As soon as I came back, you were in danger. And I couldn't do anything about it. I have a bad temper. I was too caught up in my own emotions to see you these days. Making you sad. Honey Smith. Do you love me? Yes. Mr. Smith replied without hesitation. Then it doesn't matter. As long as you love me. That's enough, and I'm really easy to please. Just give me a kiss. I said, pouting and leaning in. Kiss. Love you. Hee. Emily, Be good. Open your mouth. What's going on? Emily. Can I kiss you again? No. Couldn't he just kiss me directly? True. Mr. Smith chuckled. I'm afraid you'll suffocate, huh? What? Mr. Smith. Are you very experienced? Come on. Lady. Are you seeing someone else behind my back? Go away, boo-hoo. You're so mean. As I thought. You're not up to it. Emily. What? You're just like a politics textbook. What? The more I look at you, the sleepier I get. Mr. Smith's voice was hoarse, as if he was holding something back. You don't dare. Because there will be 5 people taking turns to break your legs. His expression stiffened for a moment, and he said helplessly, it's not that I don't dare. It's that I can't. You're an adult, but you're still too young. I have to take responsibility for you. You can be naive. But I have to be sensible. So, Emily. Be a good girl. Wait a few more years. There's no rush. What did he mean by not rushing? It was clearly him who was. Smith. I'll be 20 next year. And I can get a marriage license then. But you still have 3 years to go. Honey. Little Miss Emily. You've been quite cocky lately.